everybody, and welcome to another weekly energy forecast. I did lose my voice this morning. It seems to be on its way back, so I'm hoping it's going to hold out for the next 20 minutes or so as we go through this, but you have to bear with me. So this week is an absolutely huge week. So what we're going to have a little look at in this session is the astrological energy of the week, the energy of the season, which is really starting to shifting now, and how they all layer on top of each other to create our experience of the week. We're also going to have a look at the lunar eclipse coming up at the end of the week as well. So as I mentioned in the last few readings, March and April of 2025 are the biggest months of the year. So there's a lot happening over the next couple of months. Last week was kind of like the calm before the storm. And this is where really things are going to ramp up this week with the eclipse coming up on Friday. So this week is so important to ground. I'm going to get into more about the eclipse at the moment, but eclipses are, we've got the first eclipse of 2025 kicking off eclipse season, which usually lasts around, I don't know, like 6 to 8 weeks, I guess, depending. No, maybe more like 6 weeks actually, because a couple of weeks before we start entering eclipse energy, then we reach the eclipses, then we have the in-between period. There's usually another eclipse a couple of weeks later, and then we'll have like the down, like the coming down after that. So usually about 6 weeks of intensive energy, and that happens twice a year. So this is the first one that's happening in 2025, and eclipses bring unstable energy. So they bring like instead of working with eclipse energy consciously, it's a lot more effective to just stay grounded and really maintain your foundation as you navigate the period of time. This is also a significant eclipse season because we've got a Venus which is currently retrograde. So Venus is moving backwards in the sky, bringing us into a review period. We're also about to have Mercury station retrograde as well. And they're both going to be retrograde in the same sign, which is not something that happens very often. So we also have Neptune changing signs at the end of the month. This month is all about big change. We are also as well, we're in the last like 5 days or so of like full on winter energy. And then we reach the week before the equinox. And that's where, so in the Chinese medicine wheel, winter is associated with the water element. And then a week before each equinox and solstice, we then enter into a period of earth. And earth helps us transition through. It keeps us grounded and connected, and it helps us transition through into the next element. So it is the element that comes in that helps us with transitions, which helps us with change. Because when we're moving through something, even when we like travel a long distance, if we remain grounded and connected, that's when we can really do that with a lot more ease and grace and efficiency. So that element can be so incredibly supportive at this time, particularly with eclipse season on top of it. This message, and it's an eclipse in Earth as well, which just screams to me, ground, 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 ground. So that's what we're going to be talking a little bit about today. And I'll also give you some tips at the end of this video. I might also link some somatic practices as well, because we have some really, really nice sessions on our website. So the Earth element in Chinese medicine is related to the stomach meridian. And I think there's another one, but I'm going to get it wrong. Get that Leanne is the expert over on a Handpicked Life on that stuff. But there's some really nice sessions working with the stomach meridian, actually grounding your energy, even getting feet out on the bare feet on the earth. Really working with that grounding energy this week is going to help you see this through so much more effectively. Okay, so let's get into the astrology, I think. I guess actually just to touch on before I move on there is, we've not got 5 days of winter energy and then the next day we're then in Earth and that's it, right? Energy is flux. So it's not like there's no hard lines with energy, right? It starts like we're easing out of winter already. We have been for several weeks. You can see whispers of spring everywhere, right? It's like beautiful, beautiful sunny weather. We're seeing stirring, right? So it's not that like in 5 days, winter's over, into earth and into wood. It's more about, okay, we're starting to see the shift now. We're starting to that shift from stillness, from nourishment, from rest into a little bit of grounding. And then we move into the wood season where it's time to act. So we're in transitions now generally, and we have been for a little while. It's just that transition is going to ramp up and start to become more prominent and prevalent as we move into the next week and beyond. So it's just something to be mindful of. as we move forward. And the same with eclipses, the same with any conjunctions. It's not like, well, this is the moment of the conjunction and that's it. Even eclipses, like the energy starts to come in a couple of weeks before. Even with like smaller transits, like a Mercury transit, that still takes a couple of days to build up, a couple of days either side. It's more of like a wave on a graph than a hard point where something happens, and if it doesn't happen then it's not relevant. But it's just those themes may start to come to the surface and you'll start to notice things around those themes. Okay, let's get into the astrology of the week. Mercury in Aries is going to be conjunct Venus retrograde in Aries on Tuesday, 11th of March. So Mercury is currently moving forwards. It's about to station retrograde, I think on the 15th, Saturday, the 15th of March. So we're in an intense review period. Mercury and Venus, the two personal planets that affect our relationship with money, our relationships with resources, our minds, how we communicate, how we get around, travel, like a lot of things that are happening in our personal lives, right? So two of the five personal planets are going to be retrograde in the sky at the same time in the same sign, which means they're going to be hitting one specific area of your life, right? So I really, really, really recommend, as I say all the time, go and get your birth chart. We now have astrology charts available on our website. So if you pop over there, it will tell you what house you'll have Aries in. So it might be the fourth house of home. You can click on the different bits. It's an interactive chart, so it'll explain a little bit what that house area is about for you. So this is going to be happening at 8 degrees of Aries. And this is an intense review period, right? Because Venus kind of brings us back over things that we've already visited, and Mercury is going to do exactly the same thing, right? So Venus retrogrades are more relational. They're more about how we relate to things outside of us. I guess they're about our relationships. Venus is also our relationship with pleasure, our relationship with things that we enjoy. It can be creativity. It can be our playful nature. It can be lots of different things. So it's the planet of pleasure and abundance and relationships. So we're going in an intense review period. So if you say you have this in your fourth house, it might be more around family. If you have this in your seventh house, it might be more about your love relationship. If you have this in your 10th house of career, it could be about your relationships at work. So things are going to go under review. And with these planets being in Aries, they bring excess fire, they bring directness, and they bring really bold energy. With this like Mercury like conjunct Venus, that kind of blends the planet. It blends the energy of the planets together. And I feel like Venus station retrograde on the 2nd of March, I think it was. And that this retrograde journey will be continuing up through April, and then also like for it to clear the pre-retrograde shadow, I think will take us around to May-ish. I don't quote me on that. I've not checked those dates. So we're going to be in this energy for a couple months. It's the review period that we're in now, where everything's moving backwards and we're reviewing, and then the planet will station retrograde and it will revisit all the points that it reviewed back over, right? So we're on this journey now. And I almost feel like with this conjunction from Mercury to the retrograde Venus, this might actually bring like a moment of clarity, of understanding, because like sometimes energy can be like we feel it. We're not necessarily cognitively understanding it, but we're having an energetic experience, or we're noticing things are slowing down or moving in a different direction, or maybe our tastes have changed. That's a very Venus retrograde thing, like a change in taste. Literally redesigning your home could be a very, very Venus retrograde to do if you've got Venus retrograde in the fourth house. So, like there's a lot of redoing, reevaluating. And with Mercury here, it almost brings like it can bring the potential for cognitive understanding of what this journey is going to be about for you. We're still kind of at the beginning. We've not had the cazimi, like the Venus conjunct the Sun yet, which is what we call a cazimi. That's really like the midpoint of the retrograde. So we're still in the beginning part of this journey. So it might bring more of an emphasis to this Venus journey. It might bring cognitive, mental clarity or understanding around what this is about, what direction you're being called to move in. Again, this is going to be reviewing a good period of time to review what the last 8 years have all been about. So the last time Venus went retrograde in Aries, which is in the same area of your chart, was in 2017. So I've mentioned this loads. So what area of your birth chart is this falling in? What was happening around then? And what journey have you been on over the last 8 years? Where are you now? And this is almost like a recalibration point, like a new moon point, right? Like it's a new beginning in this area of life, because you're going to enter you're going to be stepping into the next 8-year cycle after this retrograde is over. So there might be something that you're being called to pay attention to at the moment, something that something for you to review and just notice, like, okay, where am I now? How far have I come? And where am I putting my energy? What new phase am I stepping into? And where am I going to direct my energy for this next 8 years? And that is something we can work with consciously, especially with these Venus retrogrades, because they're nice and slow and they're very significant. They happen every couple of years, so they always kind of come up. It's quite a nice time to kind of go deep, go back, to then come up out of the depths that you've gone to, and then move forward. Okay, so I think that's all I want to talk about with the Venus conjunct Mercury in Aries. So the next transit we have coming up, and this is like a precursor to the eclipse, and this transit's going to be involved in the eclipse. So we've got the Sun in Pisces. It's going to conjoin Saturn at 22 degrees, and then it's going to move on the following day, or the following couple of days, and then it's going to reach that eclipse point. So Saturn is very, very much involved in this eclipse. It's going to be conjunct this eclipse, which means that the eclipse is happening and Saturn's going to be conjoining that Sun energy, and they're going to be blending together. It's also going to be in a trine to Uranus as well. So there's a really interesting configuration of like grounded realism, maybe bringing some challenge, but then also like earthquakes, like sudden moments of clarity, like Venus, Uranus is the planet of the awakener. So it can bring, and because it's a trine, there's some support there. So it can be like challenging and supportive at the same time. So really, really interesting eclipse. So I'm going to quickly talk about just a couple of the representations of what this Saturn Pisces conjunction will start to kind of really feel on the Wednesday, but it's going to be part of the eclipse as well. So the Sun and Saturn conjoined in Pisces, this can bring like a grounded, realistic energy to a dreamy and sometimes potentially out of touch Pisces, right? That's also Pisces out of balance. Pisces can be dreamy and creative and have no limits to what it can dream. So it can be incredible at manifesting because it doesn't see boundaries or restriction. Saturn is the planet of boundaries, it literally has rings around it. It is the planet of boundaries. It's a planet of limitation. It's the planet of realism. So Saturn kind of dries things up, grounds things, and like, okay, all of these lovely dreams are really great, but like, what are we actually going to do? What steps are we going to take? How are we going to bring this into a concrete reality? So Saturn is almost like Saturn is giving a bit of a message to the Sun, like, okay, how are you taking responsibility for what is happening in your life right now? So the Sun, we've got a lot of activity in Pisces at the moment. We've got the nodes there, we're having eclipses happening there. We have got Neptune wrapping up its journey. I think it's 14 years that Neptune is in Pisces. Again, don't quote me on that. I need to fact check that, but I'm pretty sure that's right. So Neptune roughly spends about 14 years in each sign. So it's coming to the end of its 14-year journey this month, right? So this is really significant. And because Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac, it's almost like Neptune has done a full journey through the zodiac, and Neptune's about to begin a new journey as it moved past the Aries point into the first sign of the zodiac and then moves forward into a new cycle. So there's so much ending going on here. Then we've got a South Node eclipse, which is happening in Virgo, which is the sign opposite to Pisces. It's where the South Node is. So South Node eclipses are about ending, letting go, shedding. Then we've got the Neptune wrapping up its journey in Pisces. We've got the Sun coming to the end of it. Yeah, it's on the way to its end of its journey in Pisces. So there's this real sense of endings, and then also we've got like the Venus retrograde and the Mercury retrograde, which are going to drop back into those last few degrees of Pisces and then move forward again. So there's such a sense of ending, clearing things out, karmic patterns being released. Like that is a very, very Pisces things, like releasing and letting go of any karmic patterns that you've been stuck in. So, the Saturn is almost coming along here and being like, okay, how are you taking responsibility for this? What are the concrete actions you're going to take? You really need to own your shit here, basically. Like stop floating away and dreaming about things and, or even sometimes getting lost in like lofty spiritual concepts, which are a little bit like out there and esoteric. It's not that those things are bad, but it's just that Saturn wants to ground and bring a bit of realism to that. And that's what's happening in the energy at the moment. So it's a great time to take responsibility. It's a great time to pay attention. And it is a great time to kind of, I guess, have a little think about like a concrete action plan. Like how can you actually take responsibility and what are you actually going to do about it? So this could be a challenging and restrictive transit as well. Saturn says no, it dries things up. So it can bring an edge of challenge to this eclipse, which I'm going to get to in a moment. Especially when it opposes the moon on the day of the eclipse. This could really bring like Saturn can sometimes just be a bit of like a can bring a bit of a dampener on things. Um, like Saturn is boring and restrictive, but it's the planet that wants you to take responsibility, grow up, take action, do things. So it's not a bad thing, but it can bring dryness and boring. So you're like, but it's there are periods of time that are great for, putting the work in to then, get the gifts in the future, reap the rewards later. Like Saturn is the planet um, of time. So it represents time. It's about like putting the work in and playing the long game. So, sometimes it's important for us to do that and other times it's not. So, like Saturn kind of brings that touch of realism. And when Saturn's involved, he's asking you to take responsibility. And that's really, really important to pay attention to. Um, so then on Friday, the 14th of March, we have a total lunar eclipse in Virgo at 23 degrees and 56 minutes. So this is a south node eclipse. So basically what creates eclipses is where the north and south node are in the signs of the zodiac. They move backwards, as opposed to all the other planets that move forwards and then have little retrograde periods. They just consistently move backwards. And they are what create eclipses. They're the nodes of the moon and they create eclipses. So North Node, wherever the North Node is, it usually transits for about 18 months. We've not had a lunar eclipse in Virgo for about a decade. So it is a significant period of time where we're really shifting something. Eclipses bring sudden new beginnings, big endings. It can be sudden pivot points. It can bring like a little bit unstable energy, and this is really where we have very notable change. So where we have the North Node, that's almost where we're being pushed to pay attention. It's where we're being pushed to grow towards, and it's often like the direction that we're being pushed into, where we're kind of being pushed to focus, almost like a North Star, collectively and in your personal life as well. So where we have the South Node, which is always exactly opposite the North Node, that's where we're letting go, that's where we're clearing out. It's almost like an integration period where this area of life isn't necessarily a focus for you right now. There might be endings, there might be things wrapping up, coming to a close. And it's not really an area you're being pushed to necessarily focus on. However, I often like when I was doing a lot of readings when this cycle of eclipses began back in September, one thing that I massively noticed was it almost feels like when we have South Node eclipses, it's like an integration period. It's like, okay, this was a focus for us about 10 years ago. I think it's usually like eclipses work in 18-year cycles. So about 9 years before, then it's like, okay, well, what was your focus then? What were you being pushed to grow towards? Because now is the opposite. That's when we have like the nodal opposition where it shifts. So wherever you were focusing and growing 9 years ago, you're now actually it's almost like bringing what you learned from that period, but sending it in the opposite direction. So, for example, like if you have the North Node in Pisces, which is like the local area, which is kind of like life, like familiarity, siblings, neighbors, it's more about like being integrated in a local area or potentially like it's familiarity and like communication, right? So it could be that you are like a podcast host or something, or you become a part of the furniture. So, like, one thing I find interesting is like an astrologer I listen to, Pam Gregory. She's fantastic astrologer I think she's in her like 70s and she always has these like lovely scatter cushions, very English, very posh. And my partner, when he hears her voice, he knows who he is. Like, oh, you're listening to Pam again, because it's almost like, someone that becomes a part of your everyday life. So somehow that third house energy can be we're being pushed in that direction if you have Pisces on the third house. So the ninth house, which is the opposite, is like the house of long distance travel. So, whereas 9 years ago that would have been the opposite, we were being pushed to grow into the area of long distance travel, expansion, higher education, learning something new, exploration. This is now a shift. It's the opposite direction. We're being pushed to focus more on the local area. And we learned a lot on that 9 years ago, and we can bring like lessons and kind of feed them into where we're going now. So we're being pointed in an opposite direction, but we're being called to integrate the lessons that we've learned there, let go of what doesn't need to be there anymore, and then move forward. Again, I know that's quite complicated. I did do a video on the eclipses, so I will post that down below and it will give a bit more um, information about this shift into the Pisces Virgo axis and what that might be about for you. Um, so Pisces energy, again, here it's all about clearing out. Neptune's also finishing up here at the end of the month. So we're all about endings, closings, letting go. This eclipse is conjunct Saturn and trine Uranus, as I mentioned before. So we get this like touch of realism from Saturn, but then a little bit of an earthquake from Uranus. So Saturn wants to ground and make things stable, and Uranus wants to like shake things up a little bit. So like it could almost be like a moment of clarity, something's revealed, something sudden happens. Eclipses bring sudden energy anyway. With Uranus involved, this is going to be even more sudden and like a little bit earthquakey. So ground, 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 ground. It's so important. If you are grounded and you have a strong foundation, you'll be able to navigate this period with clarity. There's a lot happening, and it can potentially feel a little bit intense if you're not strong and stable, right? But if you are, then you can be able to navigate this with much more ease. So Saturn wants us to ground in the reality of our lives. We've also, with this being in Virgo as well, it's a lot about like health, routines, taking responsibility for your physical body. Like Virgo is Earth, so it's like what we can physically do on the material plane. Um, so again, it's about kind of the balance between that grounding Earth, like taking responsibility, Saturn, and then also maybe these dreamy, like um karmic, what needs to be completed, what needs to be shed, what needs to be let go of. So it's a great time. Ground, just trust, relax, surrender. We can't really work with eclipse energy consciously. So, when we talk about here, people talking about harness the energy and like, direct it where you want it to go. When we're in periods of time like this, if we're grounded and conscious, then you don't need to be working on directing the energy. You can hold your foundation and just stay aware and observe. It's almost like being on your eagle's perch. That's what Pam Gregory talks about all the time. Like, stay on your eagle's perch, watch and observe. You don't need to kind of get involved in the chaos. You can just be the witness of the chaos, and know that it's for everybody's highest good. It's moving us into our next evolution of consciousness. It's moving you into a new phase of life. And the more you can be aware about where life is pushing you to let go, shed, move on, or start something new potentially as well, then this period of time is almost like the universe is going to be talking to you, like telling you what direction you're here to move in at this time. Okay, so, and then Saturday, the 15th of March, Mercury stations retrograde. So it's almost going to join Venus on that backwards review period through the fourth house, through Aries. So have a little look at where that's falling in your chart. When planets station retrograde, they almost get like an exclamation mark. In front of them, and they become a lot more pronounced. So Mercury retrogrades are very, very famously known for like miscommunications. Whenever there's a Mercury retrograde, like read the contract, read the terms and conditions, reread, like check things twice, make sure that you are reviewing things. It's a great time to like do a review of like a marketing system or any form of communications. It's a great time to redo something, to revisit something from the past. It sometimes isn't always the best time to try to move forward with something, particularly in the area of your life that it's hitting. So obviously we've had the Mars retrograde, which was a lot more about like your physical energy and also whatever area it was transiting, which would have been the Cancer Leo areas of your chart. This retrograde is hitting your Aries area of your chart. So it will be hitting a different area of life, but it is a period of review. It's a period for refinement. It might not necessarily be a period to begin something new. I would really, really recommend holding off if it feels right, right? Like you are your own energy reader and you know what's best for you more than anyone else. So if it really, really feels right to begin something, launch something now, then please do. However, I would really, really invite you to try to just go with the energy and stay with where it might be taking us, which is more of a review and an inward period of introspection, as opposed from a very outward moving forward period of time. However, again, like you know you better than anyone else. And also, say, for example, if you have Mercury or Venus retrograde natally in your chart, actually might be a great time to start something new. So, there's never any black or white with astrology. There's always different conditions and other things happening. So, go with what feels right and really tune in and check in. And if you don't know how to make those decisions, I would really invite you to have a look at your human design chart because that can give you an indication of how you're uniquely designed to make decisions, which can be incredibly helpful for knowing where it's best to put your energy and where it's best to maybe restrict or wait. Um, okay, so I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to touch on for today. I know we've gone into a lot there. It is a very, very big period of time. Um, in terms of those guys who are with us on the membership, we have some really nice practices this week. So those guys who aren't with us, I might try and put some YouTube links down below for some grounding practices that would be really, really supportive at this time. So, it's really helpful to understand what energy is influencing us, but it's almost like that question of, okay, well, what do we do with it? It's really easy to like gather knowledge, but actually acting on it and really paying attention to it, building consciousness around it, and then directing it and sending it where you want to go can sometimes be the most helpful way to work with these things. It's about understanding and then actually doing something about it. So that's really what we're about over on a Handpicked Life. We're about working with your body, working with your energy system, and sending your energy in the direction we want to go, and also working with your energy diagnostically. So, for example, when things feel very up in the air, chaotic, then working with grounding practices can be really important. If you're someone that's struggling with worry, for example, then working with the earth element and the stomach meridian can be really helpful for balancing that out. If you're someone who's anxious, then balancing fire or working with the opposite element of water can help soothe and calm those emotions and the way that you're feeling. So that's really what we do over on a Handpicked Live. So that's why we recommend practices each week in response to the energy that's around. So you can go over there and intuitively pick the practices you want, or you can work with them on a more general basis. So, for example, the practices this week that we've recommended is the ground and transition earth element energy medicine yoga session. So it's a 30-minute session. We've got a bunch more, but that's the one we're recommending for this week, where you can really work with those energy meridians, strengthen them, ground your energy system. We also have one for balancing all 5 elements in times of transition, which can be really helpful around equinoxes and solstices, just to get you really in alignment. And I would always recommend these sessions around eclipse season as well, just to help you ground and transition through like loud, big times of change, which eclipses always bring. We also have some sessions on connecting with the unfettered you as well, which is the one released last week. So on the membership in our new moon coaching call this month, we're working with connecting with your core unfettered self. So when we step into spring, which is all about the season of taking action, of driving things forward, of doing things that you are doing for it from an aligned intrinsic place, as opposed from what we should want or of looking for that extrinsic reward, which often doesn't lead to consistency. So we're really focusing this month at the moment of aligning with those core drivers, what lights you up, what brings you joy, and then directing those behind our actions for the spring. So we're really laying the groundwork now. So if anyone is interested, please come and join us over on the membership. And we also have a really nice EFT tapping session, which we released last week, which is all about self-sabotage. So it's called Reprogram Self-Sabotage and Live an Aligned and Joyful Life. So it's all about kind of addressing the things that get in the way of aligning with that intrinsic reward and those core drivers. So sometimes it can be things like guilt, shame, procrastination, feeling like you're not worthy. So that session will help you address the blocks. EFT is a really, really powerful practice. I'd really recommend it for shedding, letting go, that kind of thing. So again, we've got heaps of other stuff in the library, but they're the ones we're recommending this week. And also, we've got some really nice journal prompts and practices within the session we released last week on connecting with that intrinsic unfettered you, where you can really go into a journey, like going in deep into the depth of yourself and connecting with those drivers. A really beautiful session, and a really nice thing to do under retrogrades as well, like that Venus retrograde, like a deep journey into the self. Absolutely fantastic session to be working with the energy at this time. So I hope that this session was helpful. I'd love to hear if you're experiencing any of this energy, how it's working in your life, how it's appearing in your chart, what resonates with you, maybe if anything didn't resonate with you as well. It'd be really interesting to hear like what is your experience. I know, like I mentioned that last week, the Mars retrograde was pretty intense for some people, but I did actually also hear back from a lot of clients who said, actually, it didn't really hit my chart that hard. And when you look in their birth chart, you can actually see why. Like like some people it's hitting them more personally, others it can be just something that's kind of happening in the background. So always super interesting to hear and understand how this is affecting your life. So please, if you feel comfortable, I would love to hear from you. You can reach out to me on Instagram. You can drop me a message on WhatsApp. The number is on the website. And I think that's all I wanted to touch on. So I hope you all have a lovely week. Also, see you here next week for another weekly update. Lots of love.